I'm delighted. I am delighted to be a writer. As I was discussing earlier, growing up in the Mississippi Delta as I did as a kid, I really didn't know that I'd grow up and be a writer. I didn't know. I couldn't go to the library as a kid, so I didn't have the pleasure that you have today of being in this wonderful facility that has the ability to have books. And books are the memories of others. It's their conversations. It's the footprint of humanity walking through the land and leaving this idea that I was here and I had something to say. My life mattered. And whether it's a book that we love or whether it's a handprint on a cave wall that some Neanderthal person may have left, the idea that we pass through is so important. And we find ways to let others know that we were here. And this is what books do. And libraries become that place, the repository of the dreams, the goals, and the ambitions of others. But sometimes the library also becomes the repository of where you cry in a book. A lot of tears are in books. A lot of sadness is in between those covers. But it's about life. It's about life. And libraries, these wonderful buildings, gives us the opportunity, if you will, to experience others. Emily Dickinson said, and I agree wholeheartedly, there is no frigate like a book. Frigate, I guess she could have said ship. She could have said boat, but she said frigate. There is no frigate like a book to take you to places that you have never been. And for me, this is what a book does. It literally invites you into that. And you have a chance to be part of the life and the legacy of someone else. And I'm delighted that I have such an opportunity. But as I talk today, not only about my life and some of the wonderful things that have happened along the way that I could not have even imagined as a kid, but let me ask my question that I ask always. How many of you are going to Glen Allen, Mississippi for Christmas? Raise your hand. Just what I thought, nobody. Nobody is going to my little hometown for Christmas. Well, how many of you have ever been to Glen Allen, Mississippi? Raise your hand. Just me. So you see, it's amazing that with a book, you can come from a place where no one has ever been, and you have no desire really to go, but yet, through the book, I can take you there. I can take you to the heat and humidity of the Mississippi Delta, to the world that I knew as a child. A couple of weeks ago, I should say, not days now, because it's now November the 10th, and this was October the 29th. I had an incredible opportunity that was beyond belief for me. I was asked to speak at the United Nations. And I remember getting to 46th Street in New York and looking over at all the flags. And I said to myself, just as I said about the mountains today, the United Nations really is a building. It does exist. And it's right off of 46th Street, a long ways from the fields of the Mississippi Delta that were my life when I was a child. So the story of that journey and the story of what made it possible is part of the conversation that I will hold today. Writing, talking, being, and becoming. This is the journey of humanity. This is all of our journey. Because whether we know each other or not, we find ourselves part of the lives of each other. So these become the questions that we often have to deal with. We're not sure about things. And we can say to ourselves, you know, that chasm is too wide. So what do you do when you're not sure? What do you do when the chasm looks too wide? You want to do something that you've never done before. And circumstances tell you, you know, I'm not sure about this because I've never done it before. You know, it's too big. I don't want to tackle this. It is so easy to tackle what you've always tackled because then you know how to do it. But then all of a sudden, but you really, really, really want to do something else. And inside of you, it's bubbling up. but there's fear. You don't quite know how to make that happen. And I think I'll try and answer that question this morning. So Pike Peaks Community College and Library, thank you for inviting me. Lil Cliff is your guest today. And I love that picture because there was one time, I remember when I took it, first grade. Miss Mary Maxey was my teacher. And that's Glen Allen, Mississippi, the place that you've not been. And that's where that picture was. See, Glen Allen's right up there in the letters. It's a real place. And when that picture was taken, I had no idea what my life would look like. I had no idea at all. The biggest city I knew was Greenville, Mississippi, and it was 26 miles away. And it took forever to get to Greenville. I mean, just 26 miles. I mean, think, it takes you guys, you go 26 miles every day just to go to work. You know, to get to Greenville was tantamount to taking the Concorde to Paris, France. If I could only get to Greenville and see a 2-story building, this is great. Because Glen Allen was a small cotton community, surrounded by cotton fields, sharecroppers' homes, just the world that I knew. And that was Lil Cliff's world. But that was also the world in which I dreamed. That's the world in which I dreamed. What happened to your dreams when you're not sure? When you think maybe your dreams are too big for this place? Do you leave your dreams, like Lorraine Hansberry said, do they become like raisins in the sun? What happens to your dreams? And it's so important to understand that we all are given this opportunity to dream. And many of us are given the opportunity to not only dream, but to write our dreams as well. But one of the things that is so important to the dreamer and to all of us is that somebody thought I mattered. That was the most important thing that happened to me in the Mississippi Delta. The broader society probably didn't plan on me being here today. But there were a cadre of people that I call the porch people of the Mississippi Delta. These were these ordinary people who saw their future through the lengthening steps of their children, of which I was one. And because they saw their future through my lengthening steps, they did everything they could to set me on a course toward discovery, a course toward success, trying to determine who I would become and what I would do in life. They thought I mattered. And when you think other people matter, it changes how you respond to them. But more importantly, it also changes how they respond to themselves. And that's important. Because when other people think you matter, and then you think you matter, then all of a sudden it's not too big anymore. You're not unsure anymore. Because now you have resonating inside of you the idea that I can make this happen. So for that part, I'm delighted to know those people. This is my world, the Mississippi Delta. If you could hold that for me, please. Let me just read something to you, give you a little sense of that world and the feels that were mine. I remember the day the shift in my thinking began. I was just a young boy, a teenager on the Mississippi Delta, picking cotton along Highway 436 in Washington County. From my vantage point, I could see all the traffic coming and going from the city of Greenville into our small Glen Allen community. However, it was the rare sight of the red-top cab from Greenville that always caught my attention. They were rare sights indeed. I would stand and watch the cab until I could no longer see it, always imagining the life of those on the inside, either headed to or coming from the train station. I knew their world was different from mine. Cotton season after cotton season, I watched for the cabs. But I recall the day when something changed inside my head. Watching was no longer enough for me. Those internal conversations about others and their imagined success were no longer exciting. I was no longer satisfied with the culture of servitude brought on by legal segregation in the cotton world of the rural South. I wanted what I dreamed, a world beyond the Mississippi Delta, the heat, the humidity, and the cotton roads that seemed to never end. That day, while standing on the cotton road that didn't belong to me, instead of imagining who was inside the cab, I pictured myself in the back seat. From that day forward, I embraced my new dream of myself. I realized that I could live beyond my circumstances. I didn't have to just watch others. I could participate. Somehow I knew that one day my circumstances would change and that I would be part of the change. It was actually years before things did change. But that hot summer day in Glen Allen, I shifted my thinking. I saw myself in the back seat of the red-top cab. I was already traveling beyond the fields of the Delta. That day, I won where I was standing. That, to me, is the essence that moves us forward. The ability to be where we are and to win there. On a cotton road that wasn't mine, a sack on my back that I didn't own, but a dream in my head that was mine. That dream was mine. No one could own my dream. That was mine. I dreamed that one day I would be in the back seat of the red-top cab. Because for years I was so excited about others. But one day that was not enough. I wanted to be in the midst of the others. And that, to me, is what our conversation is about today. Our way of thinking. How do we move forward? What happens when we bring entrepreneurial thinking into our lives? What happens when we choose the right mindset? And that is so critical. Because most people don't know that there are two mindsets. Because we just wake up and we go about life. We live. We do things. We don't know that we have a choice. There are two mindsets. The fixed mindset and the growth mindset. Dr. Carol Drake out of Stanford has done incredible work on the mindsets. And the fixed mindset is the mindset that could have told me as a kid, your parents picked cotton, your grandparents picked cotton, your great-grandparents picked cotton, your great-great-grandparents picked cotton, and your great-great-grandparents before them were slaves. So there is no change. That's the fixed mindset. It says, I live on 3rd and 4th Street. I would never live beyond here. I would never own my own business. I would never do this. I don't have this. I don't have that. I can't make this happen. That's the fixed mindset. It says, stay here, live with it. You know it. You don't like it, but you know how to maneuver within it. But then there's the growth mindset. That's the mindset that says, one day, Clifton, you can be in the back seat of the red-top cab. That's the mindset that says, tomorrow hasn't come yet. So don't start subscribing stuff to a day you haven't seen. Don't make tomorrow a bad day. Make it your good day. You have that ability to do that, to cast tomorrow in a whole different perspective. So the Mississippi Delta, this was my world. This was my life. That's all I knew. I was born picking cotton. I remember my great aunt, Mama Punk. And in the South, we don't use the full name until you get married or you die, because we use all these other names, and you don't even know a person has a beautiful name like Eleanor Peters Booz, because everybody calls her Mama Punk. You don't know that other name. Well, this is the lady who was just so determined, so absolutely determined that my life would be successful, and brought into my life those incredible attributes that I still treasure today. Looking at this world, the Mississippi Delta, my world and my life, would it ever change? The porch people. They're just as important in the 21st century as they were in the mid-20th. So the question I would ask you to think about, not who are your porch people, but who are you being a porch person too? See, everybody would say, oh, I would love to have a porch person. But you can't have a porch person unless someone is willing to become one. So that's the question I want you to mull over in your head. Yeah, this is the 21st century. Technology is here. Hashtag is here. Twitter is here. Everything is here. And we still need caring people. We still need visionaries. We still need people who dream for us. We still need people who believe in us. We still need people who get so excited when something good happens to us. We still need that. We still need to be around people when they see us, their eyes light up, they're delighted that we've shown up. We still need that. Caring visionaries, we still need them. We still need people to impact our life and impact our work. We need those voices of consolation and voices of gratitude and voices that tells us that tomorrow is still the best day. We need that. You know, you need your version of my great-grandparents, Papa Joe and Mama Pearl. You need your people today, because they're the ones who helped me to understand, if you will, that community was the important thing. They were among the people who literally thought I mattered. And how did they show it? Those are the memories that I will always have. In Glen Allen, to get to Greenville, as I said earlier, was tantamount to taking the Concorde to Paris, France. And it's only 26 miles away. But Papa had a car, a 1949 Buick that very seldom started on time. The car was sick. We all knew that. But on Saturday mornings, I'd want to go to Greenville. And I would just beg Papa. And occasionally he would say, okay, let's go. And that became the treat of my life, me and my great-grandfather in the 49 Buick that wouldn't start. Papa get in the car, turn the ignition, nothing happened. The car does not say a word. But in the Delta, where we grew up, if you would hum a Dr. Watts hymn, you thought miracles would happen. But nothing happened. The car wouldn't start. The car wouldn't start. So my grandpa would say, go break a Chinaberry stick. Literally. And I'd go and break my grandpa a Chinaberry stick. He would raise the hood of the car, hit something under the hood with the Chinaberry stick, get back in the car, turn the ignition, and the car would start. Every time. Now, you may think I'm taking literary license, but I'm not. I was doing work for Ford Motor Company in Dearborn, Michigan, and I was telling the same story. And one of the guys said, Mr. Taulbert, I know what your grandfather was doing. You see, he parked his car under the Chinaberry trees, and those cars had portholes that had filled with leaves, stopping the carburetor. It wasn't getting what they needed, the air that they needed. So what your grandfather was really doing with the Chinaberry stick was cleaning out all of that while you were seated in the car. So then when he got in and turned the ignition, everything was on, was on point and was making it, all the points were making it the way we'd go to Greenville, 26 miles away. But it would take my grandfather 2.5 hours to drive 26 miles. Because he would stop and talk to everybody seated on their front porch. And then he would have a list. Anybody wanted something from Greenville, and my name was Boy. Boy, go write it. It was almost like Clifton Lamore Taulbert was not my name. My name was Boy Go. And in my world, Boy went. So it worked out perfectly for my grandfather. You didn't ask questions in those days. You just did what you were told to do. But it was in that world that my grandfather helped me to understand that other people mattered. Then there was my great aunt, Mama Punk, the lady that I went to live with after my great-grandmother passed away. I didn't have the pleasure of having a mom and a dad living in a house with a white picket fence and a dog named Corey. But I did have the pleasure of having people who cared about me in these multiple homes that I lived. And this was the last home, Mama Punk. She was determined that I'd get an education. And I had to travel 100 miles round trip to school every single day. I never missed a day out of school. I graduated valedictorian of my class. I'm a member of Phi Beta Kappa today. I lecture at Harvard University as well as your Air Force Academy here. But it's all because of this lady, this porch person from the Mississippi Delta. You see, my great aunt would get out every morning before I would, have a flannel gown and a head rag, and she would stand on the front porch and pull the string to a 60-watt light bulb every single day for 4 years. You see, good community works when we work good community. Good community is not a conversation. It's unselfishness in action that you see, that you feel, and is part of you every day. And because of her pulling the light string, never letting me miss a day out of school, I can remember, I'm in high school, probably 10th grade, 11th, and I said, Mama Punk, let me miss school today because we didn't have lunch money. And it's embarrassing to be that old, 15 or 16, and all of your friends have money, and the city kids had cars, and you had none of that. Plus, I was all dressing wrong anyway. I mean, so you had enough stuff against you coming from the country and going to the city to school, and then you didn't have lunch money. So I asked Mama Punk, I said, Mama Punk, can I miss today because we don't have lunch money? Well, you don't know Mama Punk. Mama Punk is a good Christian, but not that day. She got in my face and she said, now, let me tell you, you get on that blank bus. Can't fill in the blank here. You get on that blank bus because nobody starves in a day. You'll eat when you come home. Now, why is that important? You have to understand that world in which we lived. Had I missed one day, I would have wanted to miss 2 days. Had I missed 2 days, I would have wanted to miss a week. Had I missed a week, I would probably miss 2 weeks. And before long, I would be so far behind, it would be embarrassing to go back to school. And somebody would be knocking on her door. Miss Punk, you think the boy's ready to drive tractors now? But you see, when other people care about you, their vision becomes important. Her vision for me was bigger than the one I had for myself. And I'm forever grateful that she never let me miss that one day out of school. And I've been in school ever since. Then there was the old African, life and work. Just ordinary man who lived in that shotgun house. Can't even park a Volkswagen in it, it's so small. But this man was incredible. He was incredible. He was a scavenger, was unmarried, didn't work at Murray's Gin, couldn't sing the blues, didn't play baseball or anything like that. But he scavenged books because we couldn't go to the library. And on Saturdays, he would walk into Glen Allen, where we live, about 12 miles, with his satchel filled with books. And in his stuttering voice, he had to walk beyond the main area to the area what we call the colored community. And we would be either shooting marbles or something like that, and my grandpa would be sitting on the front porch. And he would say, Ed Young, I need a drink of water, real bad. And my grandfather would get him a dipper filled with water and crushed ice. And the old guy would just take off his coat and drink his water and then take his books out of his satchel. And in his stuttering voice, he would read to us. To the field hands, the cotton pickers, taking us to places that we have never been. This is what books do. They lift you. They take you. They send you to another place where you make incredible discoveries, if only just for a moment in time. And then when he would finish, he would always pass by us and he'd say to us, now, I tell you, don't worry about what other people say. You're marked for good. He never left us without saying that you are marked for good. This is what good community requires. It requires those voices of affirmation to help you to understand that you have a place on this planet. You have a reason for being here. That there's a gift inside of you that needs to come forth. There is something inside of you that someone else needs to understand and be part of. So you need those incredible people. And then there was my uncle, the Iceman in Glen Allen, Mississippi. He was bigger than life. Khaki pants, khaki shirt, and his pipe. Prince Albert tobacco everywhere. But there he was, my uncle, the Iceman in Glen Allen, Mississippi. Owning the ice house is not a big deal, I suppose, but it is a big deal when everybody else is picking cotton. It is a big deal when the ice house is owned by a black man and it serves everybody in the community. Everybody had to go to the ice house. And he hired me to work for him. Uncle Cleve demanded excellence. He may not have understood the word excellence, but he certainly knew it when he saw it. And when it wasn't seen, he would certainly let you know. He didn't know the word entrepreneurship or the conversation by which I was introduced earlier. But the word they used in the Mississippi Delta was gumption. You either had gumption or you didn't. And gumption was the word that defined whether or not you were going to make it in life. And Uncle Cleve said one day, I've been watching you. I think I'm going to hire you to work for me. You got gumption. So what is gumption? It's that ability that other people see that's inside of you that leaves you with the idea, yes, I'm a kid, but that's not the real story. You won't always be a kid. You won't always be a kid. But he said you got gumption. So Uncle Cleve became the professor. You see the cab of that 1947 International pickup? That was my schoolhouse. Behind the back seat of the cab in his truck, there was just tons and tons of oil rags. For whatever reason, Uncle Cleve was determined that his engine would never, ever run out of oil. So probably every day, not once a month, every day, he'd get an old plaid shirt, get the dipstick out, check the oil. And then the car smelled like two things. You thought it was an oil well and a Prince Albert tobacco factory, because those two things intersected in the cab of that car. Uncle Cleve would have his arms out of the window. I'd be sitting there, and boy, let me tell you something. And that's when the lessons would begin. You know, I did a talk show, a national talk show the other night out of LA, and it was about men and boys not talking, and men shirking their responsibility to tell their sons and their nephews and their cousins about life and the things they needed to know about health and education and all those things. And I think across the United States, I said, well, I didn't miss out. I said, in the cab of my uncle's truck, I learned about life. And he was such a financial conservative. I remember him saying, it's impossible to do this, I know. But his word to me was, save 50 cents out of every dollar, and you'll never have to ask anybody for anything. Now, that's half of what you make. And I'm not sure he was paying taxes. I'm not sure. Because, you know, that's probably a good part about being black in the Mississippi Delta. They overlooked us. So I'm not sure he was paying taxes. Because he said, save 50 cents out of every dollar, and you never have to ask anybody for anything. Well, I can't do that. But I learned that saving was important. And of course, I know if you know anything about the Delta, for many people, that's where the blues was born. And just as books need a house, so did the blues. And they were called juke joints. And they were everywhere throughout the South. And they were the places that teenage boys wanted to go. And they were the places where your uncle would park by the juke joint and tell you, okay, can't go here. And let me tell you why. Didn't like it one bit, but I finally figured out I couldn't go. You could go in the daytime, but nothing happened. To go into the juke joint at daytime is almost like going to church. They're just serving hamburgers. Nothing is going on in the daytime. So you're not trying to get in the juke joint at 11 o'clock in the morning. You want to be in the juke joint at 9 o'clock at night. That's when the whole world comes alive. I heard about it. I didn't see it. I just heard about it. But my uncle, in the seat of that 1947 International pickup truck, when I wasn't cutting ice, when I wasn't working for him, he was teaching me about life and about work. I introduced Uncle Cleve to the world in my very first book, Once Upon a Time When We Were Colored. Richard Roundtree played Uncle Cleve in the movie Once Upon a Time When We Were Colored. And he did a stellar job as Uncle Cleve. He really caught his tenacity and his persistence, that incredible spirit of I can do this. I can make this work. I can make this happen. But you know, at some point in time, I realized that the lessons that Uncle Cleve had taught me were not just for that moment in time, but they were for my life. And I have learned since that in the first book is when I introduced him, and he had become a favorite character in my writings. And I don't know if you know that I've done a series of children's books called Little Cliff and the Porch People. And Uncle Cleve is in every one. They're all over the world. They're the most incredible full-color books you have ever seen. Uncle Cleve is there at the Ice House. And there's one book called The Cold Place, which is about me and Uncle Cleve. It's just incredible. So I realized that what I learned from him was not just for the moment as a 14-year-old or 15-year-old, but the lessons that I learned were for life. And a few years ago, I had a chance to write the book that many of you may have heard about, to just give an account of my life with Uncle Cleve, taking it from all the books that I had written about him, The Last Train North, which was nominated for the Pulitzer Prize, Watching Our Crops Come In, which was the third book in the trilogy. All of these books contain the life of Uncle Cleve. But in the Ice House, I just brought all of those things together in one place. And the lessons that he taught me. As I said, he didn't know the word entrepreneur, but he was one. He didn't know about entrepreneurial thinking, but that's the way he won his life. And those are the lessons that he taught me. Those are the things that I learned at the Ice House and in that particular truck. So I asked myself today, am I sure? Is it too big? I don't think so. I don't think so. I had the opportunity to bring Stairmaster exercise systems to the world. I don't know much about physiology, still don't have a muscle, but I said to myself, if somebody else can do this, so can I. And I owe a lot of that to Uncle Cleve and the Porch People from the Mississippi Delta. I remember when Uncle Cleve and I would go to Greenville to make deposits at the bank. You know, because of legal segregation, the clerk at the bank would stand back, and my uncle would pass his little passbook under the cage. And I remember the guy being very careful not to touch his black hands. And my uncle would take his little passbook and put it back in his pocket, and away we'd go back to Glen Allen, 26 miles away. But at the turn of the century, I had an opportunity to be part of a de novo group that started a bank in Oklahoma. My wife said, would we lose everything? I said, possibly. I said, but I got to do this. I said, it may take all we got, but I got to do this. I said, we have an opportunity to be bank owners, not depositors, but owners. And we did. And in 2008, the bank was sold for the largest cash sale of any bank in the history of Oklahoma. But that's not what's important to me. I wish I could have resurrected my uncle and taken him through the front door of the bank. A bank that his great-grandson, great-nephew, I should say, had the keys to. That is what I wish could have happened. Because a lot of what had happened in my life was because of him and because of these incredible people that cared for me, who thought I mattered in a world where that was not commonplace, the world of the Mississippi Delta. So today I can say, yeah, I can do this. I can do this. We started a coffee company 4 years ago. You know, coffee had its birth in Africa. There was no African-American-owned coffee brand in the United States of America. There are black roasters, but no coffee brand. I asked my wife, I said, well, I think I want to do this. It's going to be hard, but then easy has never been guaranteed to anybody. I said, it's going to be hard, but we can do this. So now we're making our headway. We're regional. Started out in the city, but we're regional. We're making our way nationally. I remember I was in D.C. working, and my wife, who's the epitome of class, she is so beautiful and so wonderful. And as my son says, you spend so much money on my mother, don't you? Yep, I said, yep, she doubles as my girlfriend and my wife. So we spend the money on her. But that day in Washington, an 18-wheeler showed up with all of this coffee. Barbara called me. What am I going to do? I said, well, look at it like this, Barbara. I said, you are the owner of the company the same as I am. You're there with the 18-wheeler, and I'm on K Street in Washington, D.C. There's nothing I can do to help you. I said, you have to figure out what to do. I said, call all of our friends, and we'll get it unloaded. She got it done. She got it done. But I've been paying for that gesture ever since. She made a trail to Saks Fifth Avenue. I've been paying for that ever since. So now, after that, I know exactly what to do. I make sure that the coffee comes in when the whole team is there. And my wife can just sit in her office, send me a text. The coffee is here, all the guys are here, and it's all done. So, it saves me for at least one trip to Saks. I can do this, and I will do this. And that's the difference between those who think entrepreneurially. Because we all can, but will we do it? Will we go through the effort to do it? Will we put in the time to do it? Will we be willing to sacrifice to do it? Because it does require that. It requires spending what you don't have. It requires giving time that you don't have. I don't have weekends. I don't have them. I'm working. I was up this morning while all of you were sleeping, working on projects, getting information out to our potential clients. I can't use the excuse that I'm in Colorado because my clients won't buy that. Because there's a Bartlett familiar quotation that says, excuses only satisfy one person, and that's the person who makes it. Because nobody else buys it. So you just do what you have to do. This is what the entrepreneur does. And this is why this level of thinking is so important in every aspect of our lives. Not just to own a business, but it helps to jumpstart your life. To realize, I can do this, and I will do this. It's just that important. Well, it's been a delight to take you on a little journey, and I think Sean has said that I have some questions. If you guys have questions, I don't know how many more minutes I have, but I certainly will be willing to entertain some questions. I hope that I at least talked about some of the things that you expected me to talk about this morning. This is my second speech already, so I don't want you to think I've been just lazy. This is my second speech already. And in addition to the early morning work that I got up and did this morning, I had to get that coffee off the trucks this morning. Because it's getting cold in Oklahoma. And I love that. Because there's one thing about coffee. You drink that cup of coffee and you go to the bathroom in 15 minutes and you need another one. You love that coffee.
I have a question.
Sure.
I love coffee with all my heart and soul next to chocolate. What brand?
Roots Java. Roots Java coffee. I got a card for you. I'll give you the coffee card. I'm a well-prepared entrepreneur. I do not come to town without my coffee card. But are there any questions regarding the conversation? Yes, sir. Who was Uncle Cleve's professor? I'm sure he had one, because no one really captures life by himself or herself. But I don't have an answer. I know that Uncle Cleve was born in Coldwater, Mississippi. I've never been there. I know it's near Memphis. When I met Uncle Cleve, he was already fully grown, fully worked. I don't have memory of him outside of Glen Allen. So I have no idea who would have crossed his path. But all I know is that he became inspiration for so many others as he drove the speed limit in his truck and always tipped his hat to the ladies. That was my uncle. Yes, ma'am.
Did you have a chance to thank him? I'm just wondering how important that is in the whole scheme of affirmation and helping one another.
Good question. I did not have a time. Well, yes and no. Because I thanked him all along the way. When I graduated from high school, went away to banking school, and then to the military, Uncle Cleve was still alive. So I would come home. And by that time, he had retired. But he was still reading the paper every day, still keeping abreast of what was going on. And in my world, you really respected your elders. I mean, you just did it. So I had an itinerary that I had to do when I'd come home. And Uncle Cleve was there on the itinerary. So I'd go to his house, and I would sit with him, and he wanted to know everything that I was doing. From his perspective, I did thank him. But from where I am today, from where I was then, he has a son who's still alive, who's 87, my cousin Joe. And Joe lives in Las Vegas. And so Joe knows how much I appreciate his father and what he is now meaning to so many people around the country. Any other questions? Yes, sir. Is there a God-faith element? I put it like this. How do you walk out of your house in Colorado Springs and see mountains that you didn't make and trees that you didn't make and sunshine that you enjoy that you didn't make and not have faith? I would find it very difficult to live my life without faith. Yes, sir.
You spoke, sir, about it was natural in your generation, admittedly my generation, that there was respect for the people before our elders, for the people who brought us by. And I think we live in a wildly different time now where cynicism fades. I'm not cynical, but it seems to me that the morals that we grew up with is not prevalent.
It's not prevalent. It's misplaced. I kind of look at it like a virus has attacked our community. And if you ever read a book, it's so thick. It's called The Pandemic of 1918. It's about the influenza epidemic that almost wiped out the world. And it's simply, no one knew what was going on. People were dying all over the world, had no idea what was going on. They were just dying. And, microbiology had not come of age at that time. So viruses were not really known, but there was one renegade scientist in Boston who began to look at it from an entirely different perspective and realized that this incredible pandemic was started by something quite simply, people not washing their hands and sterilizing medical equipment. Both easy things to do. I say that to say this, that the lack of respect and the lack of community that we may have observed in our childhood has been attacked by a virus. But the answer to that virus is close at hand. It's close at hand. It's as close as recognizing that we are the answer to the problem. It's washing our hands, sterilizing our utensils. And for me, I can't change the world, but I can change my world. I don't just give these talks. I have kids who call me from all over the country that I can't talk to all of them, but the ones that I do, I'm committed to it. I'm committed to changing the world where I live, where I am. And I hope that other people catch that as well. Because mentoring is unselfish caring. Caring about other people, just as people cared about me. And I try to do that. To me, that's part of the washing of the hands. That's part of the sterilizing those utensils. Getting rid of the place that these viruses can grow. Because you know, a virus can't grow unless it has a host body to live in. It can only stay in the air for a few minutes, it's dead. But once it attaches itself to a community or attaches itself to a child or a person or a young boy or a young girl, it's got a hold. But there is a way to unhold that. But that takes another whole presentation. Are there any other questions? Yes, ma'am.
When I was in the book, in the Ice House, your uncle kept expressing to you to get it in your head because things are going to change. Well, we had the Ice House, but pretty soon the refrigerator came along. How did he maneuver, and how do we get our young people to realize that things are going to change? What we see today is not going to be tomorrow. But I find it hard to get it over to them. They don't seem to grasp it.
Well, when I was a kid, change was not as rapid as it is today. Change has always been inevitable. It never asks permission to come. We go to sleep and change shows up. So it comes. But today, technology has brought about a way of living that what we have today, Dell or Microsoft will have something different 24 hours from now that totally changes our world. I think that young people realize that change happens, but what they don't realize, what is required of them in order to participate in the change. And I think that is what Uncle Cleve was trying to help me understand. That, you know, Cliff, you know, I learned how to take a 300-pound block of ice and cut it into 150, 75, 50, and 25 pounds just with a pick. I mean, I was really good at it. But he was also telling me things are going to change. You know, it doesn't matter how good you are with cutting this ice and how good you are with the customers. It doesn't matter. You've got to be prepared for something else. Thus his push always toward education, always toward getting something in your head. And that was his way of saying, stay on top of what's going on. The world changes, and we can be part of that. You know, we can be part of that. And I think in his own small way, that is what he was telling me, is that the change will come. It's inevitable. But at the same time, just because you can't control change, you can control preparation. That's within our domain. Guys, thank you very much.